In this episode, we are going to reveal the role of everyone in a tank. How can a radio operator be helpful to the team in battle? What problems did crews of the legendary T-34 face? We'll also take a closer look at the role of a loader. The crew is a team of professionals, and their combined efforts turn tanks into a universal device for solving tasks on the battlefield. Tankers perform several functions that can be distributed to different crew members or done as a team. Let's have a closer look. The driver maneuvers the tank and performs the maintenance of its components. The gunner aims and fires the gun. The loader loads a round of the type needed into the gun barrel. The radio operator is responsible for communicating with other tanks, the headquarters and other troops. The tank commander performs general management of the tank, including selecting targets to fire upon. Besides this, someone takes care of the secondary armaments, like machine guns. And all of them have to watch the surroundings and the enemy. The crew is more effective if these tasks are optimally distributed among the tankers. This means that everybody's busy doing their own thing, but it doesn't always work that way. For example, the Renault FT-17 crew consisted of only 2 people: the driver, who drove the tank, and the gunner, who sat in the turret and was responsible for everything else, including the commander's work. Even for a light tank, this wasn't the best solution. But let's remember that the FT-17 was a revolutionary tank, the first vehicle to use what we now call classic layout. For tanks like this one, they had yet to find the optimal number of crew members. Talking about the driver, this position was the most autonomous, and it was so challenging that there was sometimes an additional crew member, the driver's assistant. Other tankers had to do 2 or even 3 different jobs. For example, in the legendary Soviet T-34, the commander also worked as a gunner. And it wasn't until 1943, when the T-34-85 appeared, that a gunner joined the crew. The gunner position was born when they started mounting large caliber guns on the tanks. Working with heavy rounds required not only physical strength, but also special care. There are various shells, and you have to load the ones suitable for the chosen target. In addition, some shells required extra handling before being fired. For example, the loader set the fuse's delay for an HE shell, depending on the target it was going to strike. In the tanks and SPGs with separate loading or large caliber guns, there might be 2 loaders. The radio operator usually took care of the machine guns, and that's why this position is often referred to as the radio gunner. He could also man the radio station or help the driver. Sometimes the commander also served as the radio operator. Thus, a typical crew for a medium tank during World War II and later had 4 or 5 members. Only the light tanks like the Soviet T-60 or T-70, the Japanese Type 97 Teikep, or German Panzer I and II had fewer crew members. The multi-turreted heavy and medium tanks, which were produced in various countries between the First and Second World War, are different. Here, the number of crew was determined by how many turrets with guns they had to operate. A Soviet heavy assault tank, the T-35, had 5 turrets with guns and machine guns. As a result, there were 11 crew members. After World War II, an autoloader mechanism was invented. So, the number of crew needed was reduced by the loader. The Soviet tanks, starting from the T-64, which was produced from 1963, had a crew of 3, a gunner operator, a commander, and a driver. There are also widely known French tanks with oscillating turrets, the AMX 1375 and 1390. The construction of its loader mechanism differed from the carousel type that Soviet vehicles normally used, instead using a revolving type. 2 drum loaders with 6 rounds each. After they were spent, you had to leave the battle and reload. The autoloader is a useful thing for a tank. but out of all modern mass-produced tanks, it's only used in the Soviet vehicles and on the French Leclerc. Nevertheless, the tendency to automate armoured forces has been around for a long time, and sometime soon we may see a fully functional and universal tank going into battle remotely operated and without an onboard crew. You are asking a lot of questions about all the crew members, but the one you are most interested in is the loader. So it's time to tell you about the most physically demanding work inside the tank. The rounds for the tank's gun are placed in special storage. The storage is mounted in such a way that there are always some rounds easily accessible for the loader. Other rounds may be stored somewhere in a less convenient place, for example, under the rotating platform at the turret or near the driver. The rounds can be grouped in units or separate for loading. In the former case, the loader must extract the round from storage, open the breech and ram it into the barrel. After cartridge ejection, repeat the procedure. If they are loaded separately, it's more complicated. First, you load the projectile, then charge and complete the loading sequence. After that, you are ready to fire. The loader not only needs to manage the ammunition, but also be aware of the different natures available. Considering the weight of the rounds, this job can be called one of the hardest. For example, the 122mm round of the IS-2, a Soviet heavy tank, weighs 25 kilograms. Imagine how hard a loader's job is, especially in the small space inside the tank. In addition to actual battle contribution, a loader had to prepare the gun for the battle, know how to manage anti-aircraft machine guns, and step into the shoes of anyone in the crew if needed. Every man inside a tank is an important component. There are no minor roles inside the tank, and everybody is worth their weight in gold. Only great teamwork can turn a silent vehicle into a dangerous weapon on the battlefield.